I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me at this point in time. Mr. Speaker, I rise to address this esteemed House of Representatives on an issue that are facing the American people, the issue that's facing our great nation from coast to coast. This is the issue of wanton, senseless murders of unarmed young black men and women throughout this nation. This past year, Mr. Speaker, we are all seeing on the many news platforms all across this nation, the morning news, the noon news, the evening news, all have been punctuated with videotapes of unarmed black men, mostly Hispanic men, men and women, boys and girls, teenagers, being shot down in cold blood by just a few, I want to emphasize, a few rogue cops that haunt our nation's cities, that hide behind a badge and a gun. These rogue police officers operate not to serve and to protect, but to commit murder and mayhem and use their badge, their official status, to get away with it. This popular television show, How to Get Away with Murder, could use many departments all across this nation as a formula, indeed as the plot of how to get away with murder. I bear witness that this has been going on, these murders, wanton, senseless, lawless murders have been going on in this city, in this nation, for far too long. Last year, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, I stood before the members of this body, sharing with the members of Congress the life and the murder of my best friend in Chicago, Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, both members of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Young men full of leadership abilities. Young men who were committed to serving their neighbor. Young men who were committed to try to uplift the African American community and similarly situated communities all across this nation. At this very time last year, I talked about December the 4th, 1969, the day that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were killed by the Chicago Police Department and the state's attorney's police department in my city of Chicago. They were shot. Our pathologists indicated that at the time that the police raided their apartment, that Fred Hampton lay sleeping in his bed, that he had been drugged with a drug called Seconal, and that Fred had in his body at the time of his murder enough Seconal to immobilize an elephant. That's what the science and our pathologists indicated to us. December the 4th, 1969. 4 a.m. in the morning, members of the Chicago Police Department sneaked into the streets on the west side of the city of Chicago in utility trucks that had been decorated with the signage of the gas company, the local gas company. Came in with murder in their hearts. Knocked on the door of the apartment. Mark Clark answered. "Who is it?" He asked, "Who is it?" The police at the front door said, "Tommy." Mark said, "Tommy who?" The police at the front, "Tommy Gunn," answered, "Tommy Gunn." At that time, they came shooting after kicking the door down, shooting with a machine gun and other automatic weapons, aiming to kill everybody in that apartment. After the first shot was fired at the front door, then that was a signal to those who were gathered in the rear. And they came bursting in, firing. 99 shots all total went into that apartment. And the federal grand juries indicated, after the investigations were concluded, that possibly only one shot exited that apartment. One shot fired out, 99 fired in. Cold-blooded murder. 46 years ago. 46 years fast forwarded to today, all across this nation, cops killing citizens cold-bloodedly, without any justification, and getting away with it. Not only in Chicago, but all across this nation, all across America. Dante Hamilton, a 31-year-old African-American male, killed by the Milwaukee Police Department in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on April 30th, 2014, just a year ago, less than a year ago, a little over a year ago. Eric Gardner, an unarmed 43-year-old father, by the New York City Police Department on July 17th in the year 2014, a little over a year ago. August the 9th, 2014, Michael Brown, an 18-year-old unarmed teenager, by the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department a little over a year ago. A little over a year ago, Mr. Speaker, Ezell Ford, an unarmed 25-year-old mentally ill man, by the Los Angeles Police Department in Los Angeles, California, on August the 11th, 2014, a little over a year ago. A little over a year ago, Mr. Speaker, Laquan McDonald, a 17-year-old teenager, by a member of the Chicago Police Department on October 20th, 2014, a little over a year ago. A little over a year ago, Mr. Speaker. In Cleveland, Ohio, Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy, killed by the Cleveland Police Department on November the 22nd, 2014. In the state of my birth, in DeKalb County, Georgia, Anthony Hill, a 27-year-old unarmed Air Force veteran, killed by the DeKalb County Police Department on March 6, 2015, less than a year ago. Less than a year ago, Nicholas Thomas, a 23-year-old unarmed black man, again in my birth state of Georgia, in Smyrna, Georgia, killed by the Smyrna Police Department on March 24th in the year 2015, less than a year ago. Less than a year ago, Mr. Speaker, Freddie Gray, a 25-year-old black man, while in custody of the Baltimore Police Department in Baltimore, Maryland, killed on April 12, 2015, less than a year ago. We all remember Sandra Bland, a 28-year-old woman who was found hanging in a jail cell in Wallen County, Texas, on July 13, 2015, less than a year ago. The list goes on, Mr. Speaker. November the 16th, 2015, Jamal Clark, a 24-year-old unarmed black man, by a member of the Minneapolis Police Department. Less than a year ago. Less than a month ago. Mr. Speaker, there are many, many others. We killed aboard in my city. Killed while a few years back, about 3 years ago, by a police officer who was out of a uniform, firing over his shoulder and striking Rakia Boyd in her head, killing her. And the now terminated ex-police superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, Gary McCarthy, at the time of Rakia Boyd's murder, had the unmitigated gall to stand before the camera, stand before the citizens of Chicago, and said that this unarmed young black woman who was killed, that she was the target, that the police officers aimed at the person who he killed. And this statement has been repudiated so many, many times. He fired in a crowd of people over his shoulder. There is a conspiracy in our police departments, a cancer in our police departments all across our very nation. State by state, urban area by urban area, large cities and small cities, young black men, young black women are targets, fair game for some who are wearing a badge and a gun and hiding behind a uniform and a vow that they don't believe in and that doesn't govern their lives and their official and unofficial duty. They don't believe in serving and protecting. They believe in how can we commit murder and get away with it. How can we murder those who don't look like us? Murder who we stereotypically view as criminals and thugs? And we have a right because we wear a badge. We have a gun. And we have a uniform to hide behind. We have an unmitigated right to shoot them down at will. There are laws in this nation that protect even wild animals from being killed. Why do this minority, why do this group in Chicago, Illinois, my city, there are only about 30 officers who have in excess of 10 citizens' complaints against them. This police officer who was just indicted for the first time in the history of our city, only one police officer indicted for the murder of an unarmed black man in Chicago, and he had 18 citizens' complaints against him. 18, mostly for excessive use of force. Why was he even on the streets? Why was he wearing a uniform? Why was our tax dollars being used to pay for his livelihood? We had no appreciation for the lives and the rights of American citizens. 18 times. He shot Laquan McDonald while Laquan McDonald was walking away from him. That's what the video showed. Laquan McDonald wasn't even within 20 feet of this police officer, ex-police officer. But he shot him 16 times, 15 times when Laquan McDonald was on the ground. Couldn't have threatened him at all. On the ground, he fired 16 rounds, 15 of them while Laquan McDonald was on the ground, in 16 rounds in 15 seconds. "46 years later, we have these kinds of police atrocities occurring throughout the nation. It is up to this body, Mr. Speaker, this Congress, to finally stand up and protect all the American citizens, all of the people of this great nation. Protect them from these rogue cops who are roaming to and fro in our communities, mercilessly, wantonly murdering our citizens, mostly black, Latino, young men and young women. Mr. Speaker, I will be introducing in a matter of days a resolution to establish a permanent select committee on the excessive use of force by police departments, America's police departments. A permanent select committee on excessive use of force by America's, yours and mine, the members of this body, our police departments. Mr. Speaker, if we can have a select committee on Planned Parenthood, women's health, then I know that we can have a select committee on excessive use of force by America's police departments. This select committee will be charged with, will be authorized and directed to conduct a full and complete investigation, a full and complete study, and to issue a report and issue recommendations of its findings to this very House of Representatives regarding each of the following: a uniform definition of excessive use of force, number one. Number two, create national guidelines on excessive use of force. Number three, collect accurate and reliable data on police shootings and the use of excessive force, both lethal and non-lethal. 4, implement and create a national database to make available public data of citizens' complaints filed against police officers and police departments. 5, include demographic data on police officers involved in shootings in the Uniform Crime Reporting Program. Number 6, requiring mandatory FBI reporting of police departments on the number of justifiable homicides committed by those departments. Number 7, create effective training methods and mental counseling of police officers to increase their understanding of the word, and I quote, threat, the word threat, their understanding of what the word threat means, end of quote, and read out any indication of racial animus and hostility. Number 8, create adequate training for police officers dealing with mentally ill patients. Yeah, mentally ill patients. The police do not know how to deal with mentally ill patients. And this resolution, this select committee will require training for our nation's police to deal with mentally ill patients. Number 9, require transparency of internal police discipline and police accountability. And number 10, to report to this Congress the rising costs of lawsuits and settlements that are indicative of problematic policing and civil rights violations and civil rights abuses. This is a resolution that I will be introducing over the next few days, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to conclude by repeating something that I said last year, and I intend to repeat this throughout the remaining days of my life. The murder, the political assassination, the cold-blooded murder of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark on December the 4th, 1969, will not be in vain. The murders of America's citizens, particularly young, unarmed African American boys and girls, Hispanic American boys and girls, other minorities, unarmed mentally ill Americans, unarmed white Americans. These murders by our nations, by America's police agencies, must come to a halt, must come to a screeching halt. Justice demands it. This Congress ought to promote it. This Congress, this esteemed body, ought to protect all of our citizens. We have to show and demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that just because you have a badge, you wear a badge, just because you're dressed in a uniform, just because you have a gun with a license to arrest and detain, just because you have those assets, those powers, you do not have a right, the authority, the power to commit cold-blooded murder. And don't believe, not for 1 millisecond, that you will continue to get away with it. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman